Did God do this to me? Did I do this to me?
When the suicidal thoughts came in, that's when it got scarier.
I would do anything like switch places. I didn't want that to be something you experienced.
These are thoughts and fears and things they're saying that death would be a relief right now.
Yeah. I can't carry the weight of this life anymore. Welcome to With Us, a podcast for the problems of life, where we'll be looking at things like depression, anxiety, grief, loss, trauma, and exploring how when we enter into one another's broken places, it becomes holy ground. Today we will be talking about depression and suicidal ideation. This will be a heavy episode, so we would ask that you would prayerfully consider your participation with us. Thank you for joining with us, How Broken Places Become Holy Ground. I'm Pattie Krohn, and I'm here with my co-host, Paige.
Hi.
I'm so grateful Paige is with me in this, and we've been talking about the weightiness of this next topic, looking at depression and suicidal ideation. We're just honored that you would join us, whether you are wrestling with depression or have in your past, or you're somebody you love. Again, we're just honored that you would spend this time with us.
And we want to be super clear from the start that we are not mental health experts. We are not diagnostic clinicians, but we are soul care people, and we have people in our lives, people we walk closely with. We have had moments and experiences around these topics, and it's heavy, and we have felt it. And so today our point is not to be diagnostic or clinical, but to be able to talk honestly about what depression is and what it feels like for people and what it looks like to come alongside people. Our hope is that we're not going to be over clinical, but we're also not going to be afraid to talk about it. And really, if you are someone who is in the middle of it, our big thing, we want you to know you are not alone. And for those walking alongside, they don't have to be alone because you are there with them.
Absolutely. So. And as Paige said, again, we can't stress enough, we are not clinicians, mental health experts. We are clinically informed soul care people. And what we've seen is the power of entering in and being part of the circle of care, and not being afraid, as you mentioned, fear. So we're just grateful that we actually have a guest coming in later, a couple guests who are going to share their own story and the power of being with. I think you're going to be so encouraged, challenged, find tremendous hope with our guests. I'm really, really looking forward to our time with our guest.
And if you've listened to our podcast before, you know anything about us and where we come from. Everything about our lens and our worldview is coming from a place that we believe we have our God in heaven, who is a creator, who holds this world and who holds us. And so our big thing, and would you hear this loud and clear, is that in the darkest places of depression, the light of the world can break through. And he does.
Yeah, he's present. He's present in the darkness. All right, so here we go. Before
we can really talk about or what it looks like to walk alongside people with depression, we want to understand what is actually going on. And so because it is a word that we use constantly, whether it's I'm feeling depressed or if it's I have depression itself, we would love to know what is this actually like. So Pattie, could you give us a little bit of that insight?
Yeah, I think first of all, we want to differentiate between sadness and depression. Sadness is a part of life in a broken world for everyone. Depression may not be what all people experience. That is a much different, deeper, more stubborn, persistent. In the DSM, which is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual for Mental Health, a depressive episode or a clinical depression is going to have 5 or more symptoms for over 2 weeks, period. So again, helping to differentiate between sadness, what we used to call the blues, and just the ups and downs of life from depression. And one of the core symptoms is a depressive mood or a lack of interest in life or in pleasure, and an inability to really do your daily life for up to at least 2 weeks. So again, the primary difference between sadness and a depressive disorder is sadness is temporary, it's situational, it's manageable, whereas depressive disorders are intense, persistent, they impair our daily function, again, for at least a period of 2 weeks. One of my favorite writers on depression, and he's also a clinician, a pastoral counselor, a theologian. He's got his PhD in neuropsychology, and more than anything, he was one of my professors in seminary. More than anything, he just loves people. This is what he writes, and I think it's worth quoting. Dr. Ed Welch, never has so much been crammed into one word, depression. It goes to our very soul, corrupting everything in its path. You feel numb, but also remember when you actually felt something, making it harder to bear. So this is what's so important is depression does not respond to cheer up, try harder, have more faith. It is a fierce darkness that continues day after day after day.
And it sounds like there's this sense of loss of like, where have I gone, or what is my life now? I think what's really helpful, especially if we haven't been around it or haven't heard the thoughts that are going around it, sometimes we can think it's a feeling, and it absolutely affects the way we feel. But I think what's interesting is depression goes so deep. It obviously impacts the way we feel, but also it impacts the actual thoughts that are happening. Physiologically, our bodies are being impacted by the experience of depression.
Absolutely.
And then also, I think really importantly, the inability to really be able to carry out daily tasks, that is going to impact a lot about how a person can interact with the world around them, and especially in relationship.
Absolutely. So yeah, so there's the feelings of isolation and darkness and lostness and not knowing who you are, and fear, tremendous fear for some, and then for others it's numbness, and you just don't feel anything, and that is tremendously scary. There's this complete absence of enjoying anything. The things that you once loved just bring no joy to you. And this sense, I've heard others describe it this way, this sense that you're seeing life through a glass that you can't get over. Like you're seeing the world go on. How dare it go on without me? You can see what your life once was as you look at other people, but you're stuck behind a thick glass that you cannot cross. And the other interesting thing is fatigue without the ability to sleep, exhaustion, but restlessness at the same time. So there's a lot of paradox going on in how we feel. And of course, that affects how we think, right?
And as you know, as we've walked alongside people, and even as we read and understand what it's like to be in depression, how much of it can be also tied to this idea that physical pain would almost be better because at least you could point to where it hurts. And so I think that is really worth, talking about, especially we've already mentioned the word suicidal ideation, but even getting to the point that you really do find that you want relief in any way, and death can actually become an option that
desirable.
That sounds relieving. So there's lies with it too that come from feeling like this is a form of punishment. Perhaps God is punishing us, or that we think that
there's something, there's a shame that comes
absolutely.
with this is something wrong with me. I'm broken.
I've done something to deserve this, and just really believing that if this is where I am, of course, God and others would want to be far away from me.
Yeah, I'm abandoned. And I think it is really important, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into walking with somebody who's battling suicidal thoughts, but I think it is important to say that out loud. Depression can very quickly, especially if it's beyond situational, but even situational depression, we'll talk about that in a minute, but it can move towards this desire for escape. I think for most people, it is, I just wish I could go to sleep and not wake up. I remember being in that place myself, and just that I I would embrace a really bad diagnosis right now, or it would be great to just never wake up. I think it comes from a place of just, I can't carry the weight of this life anymore. And this comes because depression stories are relentless. There just seems to be these stories, these lies that you mentioned just are relentless. They just won't stop. And they can be like, nobody loves you, nothing matters, your life is meaningless, everything is pointless, people would be better off without you, you're a burden. We'll hear a little bit more about that even with our guest. And so these are important things to speak out loud and to make space for people.
And I think that these are thoughts, I feel really emotional from my dear people in my life who've walked through this. And when they enter into this season, these are thoughts and fears and things they're saying that a year before they would have never imagined themselves thinking that death would be a relief right now. Yeah. And so it really does kind of indicate that this depression has kind of taken over these thoughts, that this isn't necessarily like the person's thoughts. This isn't what they would naturally think or go to, but that depression really is
it's a disorder
speaking here. So you've shared a little bit about the word situational and clinical depression. Can you tell us a little bit more about?
Yeah, so from my own experience, it was really helpful for me to be able to differentiate, while at the same time situational can become clinical, but situational depression is a life-changing event, a loss, a grief. For me, we shared on an earlier podcast my daughter's diagnosis, but there was also some spiritual trauma that happened in my life at a previous church that sent me into a couple years of struggle. So situational is like you feel fearful, you can even battle the hopelessness, the lostness, the meaninglessness, but you know why. Like you know what you're battling. And I remember people telling me that I should seek more help than I was seeking in the early years, even with Aubrey. And at that time, it's like, I don't know that anyone's going to be able to give me any answers. I know why I'm sad. I know why I'm hurting. Could I have been benefited by talking to more people? Probably. But that is very different than clinical depression. You do have some of the similar tendencies of like, I just want to wake up from this nightmare. As I shared earlier, I kind of wish I could go to sleep and never wake up. I'm longing for my old life. I just wish I could go back. I'll never be the same. And again, if these are left untalked about, uncared for, I had lots of people praying for me, speaking good counsel into my soul. If situational depression is left unattended, it can now go into clinical, which again, we'll hear a little bit about that with our guest. So clinical is this long-term, as I said earlier, it interferes with your ability to do life. This I've walked with others, and like you, Paige, because I've experienced situational, when I sit with people who are in clinical and they're feeling those same feelings of hopelessness and they don't know why, that is holy ground that they're trusting you with. And it's so much, the fear is just much deeper. The sense of meaninglessness is deeper. Feelings of worthlessness, unable to engage in anything. Even with situational depression, I could still function. I could still take care of some of the basic needs of my family and myself. But when you don't know why you're hurting, when you can't identify it, it really feels like it will absolutely never go away. And whether you mean to or not, for most, there tends to be this avoidance of God, because if he's present, it's too painful. And I think this is something we need to really be aware of as believers. Rather than shaming Christians who are battling depression, we should have more compassion, because it's harder to work through depression when you know God is present and you don't feel that he's present. And we've got our friends, the psalmist. Psalm 77 talks about how it becomes physically painful to remember God. So the courage of our brothers and sisters who are battling depression and inviting God into it, like we'll hear from our guest. Psalm 77 says, I remembered you, God, and I groaned. So just remembering that God is who he is and he's here makes it painful. I meditated and my spirit grew faint. When I remember God, I moan. So you see it throughout the Psalms, this fight against even physical pain, to believe and to trust and to speak out loud to the God who is near.
I'm thankful. I feel like at least in my, I'd say the last maybe 10 years, maybe a little less, there's been a little bit more attention given to this or pushback, because I think at one point, maybe the answer to depression would have been like,
have more faith.
Snap out of it. Have more faith. Like, what is the sin in your life that's causing this?
Yep. Repent.
And yet today, I feel like there is a wider acknowledgement that this isn't a faith issue. It is not always a sin issue. And
it can lead to a faith issue and it can lead to sin, but it doesn't always primarily start there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I think as we kind of want to address and bring in this Christian and biblical perspective, I think that is just so important for the people who are struggling and who would just so desperately want to be out of it, to know that God is near. You have not become someone or done something that continues to just hold him at an arm's distance, and that this isn't too dark for our God.
No, depression in itself is not a failure of faith. And as I said earlier, those who invite God into it are our bravest people among us. That honest cry of a suffering soul is beautiful. Beautiful to our Father. Because it is an act of trust just to cry it out loud, right?
And I think there is so much comfort in the scriptures from getting to look
There's
at
depression everywhere in the scriptures, right?
It's
Not just the Psalms.
And I really am, I'm so thankful. In Hebrews, we get to this hall of faith and we see people described as these mighty people in God's kingdom. And yet you go back and you really look at their story. You look at Moses, you look at Job, you look at Elijah, you look at, who else do we have on this list? David,
Paul,
as these foundational people that God has used in his kingdom. And if we really looked at their stories, today we'd be able to say they were experiencing some form of depression here.
And suicidal ideation. Moses is like, kill me. I can't do this burden. I mean, who can blame him? Millions of grumbling people who are about to kill him, who are revolting on him. And he's like, just kill me. I don't want to see my own ruin. Just take my life. Yeah. And Job, I wish I'd never been born. That same feeling. I wish I could just go to sleep and never wake up. Cursed is the day that someone told my mom a baby boy has been born. And that's how Job, losing everything. Of course, how could we ever blame Job? Elijah has this amazing spiritual victory over God's enemies. And then he sinks into a deep spiritual depression, and God ministers to him. And we have King David, who's honest about his depression that's a result of his own sin and the consequences. But he also battled depression from being a victim. He wasn't just a victimizer, he was a victim as well. So these are honest cries. And I think for me in my journey, I have found great comfort in Paul in 2 Corinthians. I mean, what a giant of the faith. I mean, most of our New Testament, the gospel spreading to the ends of the earth. So many of us can trace our story all the way back to Paul, and yet he says, we despaired even unto life. Like we wanted to die in the midst of that persecution that was happening. So it's we can see in that all these different causes, right? So within these people, we see causes. We see there's multiple causes, and so there's multiple ways that we can receive God and extend God's care. It can be you've been a victim of somebody else's sin. It can be that you have committed sin and you're wrestling with guilt that you aren't confessing. It can be that it's life in a broken world, natural disasters, diseases, disabilities. And typically it can be multiple causes. And it's important that we recognize that we can be pulled into depression in multiple ways.
In multiple ways, absolutely.
Yeah.
Even physical changes that happen in our body. Think of, the prenatal or the postpartum depression.
Absolutely.
A lot of, just
Chronic
undergoing
illness.
stress for
Chronic
a long
illness,
period of
stress.
time, chronic illness.
Yeah.
Even
what trauma does to the body.
Absolutely. Or just emotional of having things that have caused emotions and we've put them aside for too long, unprocessed emotions that can
trauma.
eventually lead to a place of depression. And I think as we just acknowledge that there's so many different ways that depression can meet us and greet us, there's really no one way out either, or no one way in as we're coming alongside people who are there. I mean, like we were saying with the people in God's word, it is such just a reminder that life, it's not necessarily these people who have caused this to come about in their life, or they've done something wrong, or God is angry at them or punishing them. That's not what we see. We see these people who are in this broken world who are crying out to a real God.
And he puts them in his story. Like these are people who interacted with God, cried out to him, he met them. And it would have been easy for the Lord to have left it out of his word. Like, this is too messy, this is too raw, this is too embarrassing. I don't want all my people to know that Elijah struggled. But no, God intentionally incorporates these stories into his word so that we can recognize the importance of that. And we look to this Jesus who leaves the 99 and goes after one, and we can see it in God's hand through the lives of Moses, Elijah, that there is no place that God can't penetrate and where he won't go to chase after his people who are hurting.
And one of these questions that I hear coming up a lot is, where is God here? And while I don't have the perfect answer for you in that specific place, I am so comforted by our God who didn't stay far away, but who came in the person of Jesus, God himself.
Not just in the ravens and not just in what we saw in Moses, but he actually took on flesh.
And he came and he lived, and there's the scene in the Garden of Gethsemane, and we've talked about this in almost every episode because it is so powerful
to life in a broken
to
world.
see Jesus suffer and to be honest about it in this deep overwhelm and sorrow. And that was like even just the beginning of what he was going to face the next few days on the cross and facing death itself. And so in the question of where is Jesus in this darkness, like he went there.
He did.
He went there.
And chose it. Yeah. Intentionally. Wow. And so that brings, one of our essential hopes of being with Jesus and incarnating Jesus as we move towards others is that even if depression doesn't lift, there is light with us that is seeking to penetrate that darkness. And that changes everything, even if the depression never lifts. And which beautifully segues us to our guests. Who do we have today, Paige?
We have some friends of ours who've been a part of our church family. We have Lindsey and Ryan Glueckert, and Lindsey's going to come share her story, and Ryan as someone who's walked with her through her experience of depression.
And this is going to be a story to stay with you and provide much hope.
Well, Ryan and Lindsey, welcome. It is so good to have you guys
for
with
being
us. Here. We start out every interview the same way. We would just love to hear a little bit about you guys.
Yeah, my name is Lindsey, and I've been a follower of Jesus and a part of Three Crosses since 2019. Born and raised Castro Valley. And yeah, this is my husband, Ryan.
Hi, guys. My name's Ryan. Born and raised San Leandro. Been at Three Crosses since I was 16, or in 2016. And and we've been married together just over a year now. And we've been together for about 5 years. It's been great.
Well, we really appreciate you being here. And go San Leandro. I'm a San Leandran. Is that what we call ourselves?
I think so.
Ooh, I even have the terminology right.
Well, it's good we got some Bay Area blood in here, you know?
I know.
This is
We've got
good.
some, since we're transplants.
I know, seriously.
So take us into your story, Lindsey. When were you first aware that depression was something that you were carrying? What was that like for you?
Yeah. So it all started in 2019. I went to college. It was like a culture shock, making a new community and everything. So it was more situational depression that started brewing. And then as time went on and I started getting more used to the college scene and just the whole routine, it started turning into more clinical.
How did you know it was turning from situational to clinical?
Yeah, it was more severe in the terms that it just continued for a really long time. And it felt way heavier than it did in the beginning.
It got darker.
Yeah, it got way darker.
Yeah, what did depression feel like for you?
Yeah. The best way I can explain it is like a black hole. And you're like in the black hole and you're looking up and you see a little bit of light, but everyone's kind of just moving and doing their own thing. But the hole is too big to like climb out of it yourself.
Yeah.
And I just imagine my childhood bedroom like just darkened, heavy, like someone was stepping on my chest, heavy, but also really emotional.
Childhood bedroom, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's what you would picture when you were away at college?
Yeah, because I lived at home for college.
Oh, okay.
So every
Okay.
time I would come home, that was kind of like my space to like unload everything.
When you could really
Yeah.
feel what you were feeling.
Yeah. And then walk out like everything was totally fine.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there was a lot of even like bodily experience to that, just like a very like visceral experience. In terms of kind of thoughts and what was coming in your mind, were there any stories that you were starting to believe about yourself, or what was kind of in your mind as you were even specifically like in your room in these places where you were able to really feel it?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot going on thought-wise of like, my burden is too heavy.
Yeah.
I shouldn't tell anyone about this because it'll only weigh them down. It also like told me lies about God too. Like he caused this. He is doing this for some sort of reason.
Trying to teach you a lesson of some sort.
Right. And
Yeah.
I was constantly thinking like, did I do something to deserve this? And I was just exploring my Christian faith at that time. So it really, there's a lot of tension with God's role and the world's role and my role and how it all interacted.
So you were just exploring faith. You were just becoming a believer
Yeah.
in the midst of this darkness.
Right. It actually
What a
brought
wrestle.
me to
What
Jesus.
a wrestle, though. What a testimony of the power of the Holy Spirit, too, that in
Yeah.
the darkness. Wow. What did you need from people, or did you not want people? You know, you mentioned I didn't want to share with anybody. I didn't want to burden them, but was there still a sense of something I did need from others? And maybe this is where Ryan can come in too. Like, what did you need from others, and did you get that? And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. At first, I didn't want to tell anybody, and him included.
Do you know why? Was it a shame piece, or was it back to just not wanting to burden?
I think it was not wanting to burden people.
Okay.
I felt pretty acquainted with depression by the time we started dating in 2021. So it was like 2 years after my first big season. And we had a conversation about it of like,
Wow.
you know, like him asking, like, I'd really love for you to open up more to me
Wow.
about it. And it took me a while because I was just really scared and didn't want to put that on him or our relationship so early. But it was a big part of me. So,
Was there something about the way he asked that you did decide?
yeah. I think, excuse me, I think it was him just being really open and creating that safe presence of a non-judgmental just energy about him. And I remember he always asks me this question of like, what are you thinking? Because I would often go silent and he could see that the wheels were turning, or I would start crying and just be really emotional. And like, yeah, he would just ask, what are you thinking? What's going on in your mind right now? And it gave me permission to like share with him what was going on.
What was that like for you, Ryan? What was that experience? What helped you stay in it like that?
Yeah, I think for us, like we started dating 21, and I didn't know that that was something that was part of her story, that she experienced that. I don't remember the exact moment, but it was years later. Like we had a relationship, and at this point, like we really cared for each other. But there were times where I would notice either she would like shut down, and it wasn't like a moment where something happened or someone said anything, or I just feel like, man, like I think something's off. And it got to a point where I was like, I'm just gonna ask her. I don't know what this is, but there's something like a little bit further down this from the surface. And so I started asking her, oh, like what are you thinking, or like what's going on, or something like that. And at first I remember it was like there was a stiff arm, and again, rightfully so. Like it's a dark and heavy thing, but there was a time where she eventually like invited me into that, and I was like, wow, I had no idea that this was something that was like so pertinent to her story and something close that she experienced. I remember when she first shared that with me, that I was just like really taken aback, and I remember feeling really like I wanted to fix things or to be really restless to help. And I learned that that wasn't always helpful or a way that depression can even respond well.
Were you able to identify why you wanted to fix, like?
I think it's because I just cared, and I didn't want her to feel.
So it wasn't your own anxiety or your own fears. It was more out of love for her.
Yeah. Like I remember explicitly saying and thinking that I was like, I would do anything like switch places. Like I didn't want that to be something you experienced, but yeah.
Lindsey, obviously this is
Yeah.
touching you in some way. What are you thinking as you hear Ryan share?
It's like, it felt like such a long time ago.
Yeah.
Where he wasn't a part of it. But I remember it so vividly.
So it felt very different before Ryan entered in and was with you in this.
Totally. I was just like really alone. And I think my parents and my family felt similarly of like, okay, there's something going on. But I just wouldn't share about it because I was so like scared. And then when like the suicidal thoughts came in, that's when it got scarier. So yeah, I'm just really thankful that the Lord blessed me with Ryan, because he like walked alongside me so well. And it involved me having to like voice what I needed to, because I think I was looking for a lot of comfort in other people at one point to try and fill this void, or like bring me self-gratification in the sense of like, okay, I just need like a Band-Aid. And then I realized that people don't know how to read my mind. They don't know exactly what I need. And so that's when I started depending on the Lord way more. And just knowing that whenever I would spend time with him, I would feel better. And everything kind of progressed from there.
As Ryan had entered into this story with you, or even your family, were there things that people would say or do that would help in any way, or be meaningful to you in any way?
Definitely. Follow-up is really important. So when someone says, like, I'll check in with you in a few days, and they do that, it means so much to just feel like you're consistently being cared for, rather than a one and done thing. Like we were really busy during our dating time, so we wouldn't really get to see each other too much during the week. But I remember he would drop off like my favorite candy or like a note or like flowers or something. So it was nice to just have those random acts of kindness and thoughtfulness when you feel so alone.
Yeah. And probably some of those lies that come in that you don't matter, that people are better off without you.
Yeah.
That constant reminder that you are on somebody's mind.
Yeah.
And they do care for you enough to pick something you love. They see you as beyond the depression also.
Totally.
To recognize that this is a candy you like. You know, that's living outside of this one part of you too. And it sounds very beautifully dignifying and emphasizing your importance to not only Ryan but to the world.
Yeah.
It's really powerful. You mentioned earlier that actually this is kind of what led you to God, but it did sound like a wrestle. So can you share a little bit more about God's nearness or distance? Did God ever feel like he was the problem in a sense? I mean, you were honest and said you wondered if, you know, he was teaching you a lesson, or can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I definitely had a hard time knowing that this was a part of God's plan for me. But I used him as the scapegoat in the beginning. I was like, he's doing this to me.
Like blaming?
Yeah. Almost like trying to understand why it was caused, what does it mean? And so I'd often like think of him as like I'd be fearful of him in the sense of like, he has so much power. Like he put this on me.
Like he would make it worse if you misbehaved, you would go darker.
Yeah.
How frightening.
Yeah. And it was just such a twisted view of who the Lord actually is. And like throughout time, as I got to know Jesus and just read more of the word, I was reminded of like Bible stories that showed his true character, of that he loves me and he's there for me, and he is just as saddened as I am, even more, to see me in this place and see him more as a loving father. So it changed over time, thank the Lord.
It sounds like you kind of had to go in the door of God's Son, incarnate, to be able to trust the Father. I think that's true for a lot of us, for lots of different reasons, but I think that's so beautiful and does testify to the gospel. But wow.
So you've been on this journey now for quite a while. How do you feel like walking and living with depression now has either changed or shifted for you from early on?
Yeah, definitely having the Lord as my first and foremost person. And now I see him as my anchor. And I just continuously remind myself of Bible stories of like Elijah when he prayed to die. And yet God sent an angel to take care of his basic needs, make sure he was fed and rested. Or even just like Peter in the storm of like, as long as you focus your eyes on the Lord, like whatever's going on around you will feel like it's a little bit more quieter as long as you focus on Jesus. So it was definitely the word that shaped me, as well as just sharing my story. I think the enemy really wants to keep people isolated and silenced. And when you share your story and open up to your friends or family, it takes this weight off where you don't have to carry it on your own. And you can have that support system where people can love on you and feed into you, and just serve you in the way that Jesus wants them to.
So is that what you would encourage somebody listening that's experiencing that deep darkness right now would be? Yeah, is that what you would say to them?
Yeah, absolutely. And just knowing that there's a God that loves them more than they'll ever know. And just
Ask for
talk about
help.
it.
Well, Lindsey, you really have journeyed through so much to even like be in this spot and to share this confidence you have regardless of what is happening around you. Ryan, as you've now journeyed with Lindsey for what, 5 years? What for you do you feel like have you learned in the process of getting to come alongside her?
Yeah. I think one of the things that was valuable for me to learn was learned over time with her. And like I said previously, I was like, I wanted to fix. I really wanted to do something to help. And I quickly realized that it's often the space that I created or held and allowed her to just be, whether that was, if it was like a tearful moment, to like hold that space. Like we don't need to say anything in this moment. Reminding her that like I'm here, and reminding her of other people that are here, that God's with her, that like no one's gonna leave you. I remember just learning, holding space and the power of that. I think that was the best thing. And I think consistency, she said follow up earlier, was helpful. And I think remembering conversations we had or moments, and like it was okay if we didn't like finish a conversation or a moment that she was experiencing, like we could come back to it, and just letting her know that that was okay, not rushing it.
Well, I think in so many ways, like obviously there's none of us can be God to one another, and yet I really do believe that God can use us to image and reflect his steadfast love, regardless of what you feel or what you're able to do that day or what that day was like for you. And so, Ryan, it just really is like this beautiful picture of who God is to us in those spaces. So,
Yeah, what an incredible story of being with, you know. And I'm sure there were moments that you needed to bring other people in and widen that circle even more. But it sounds like the Lord really did not just evidence his love for you in Jesus in the pages of Scripture, but by Ryan incarnating Jesus in your life. And so, where have you needed support? Have there been times that you felt like, as somebody who loves someone hurting, has there been support for you? What have you needed?
Yeah, I think for me, I don't know if I've like necessarily like sought that out necessarily yet. I do know, as far as like the circle goes, like we widened it at several points, and we talked about it to how can we better care for like Lindsey. I remember like having really cool conversations with her mom, where she would call me out of the blue or text me, and she'd have a question, or we would talk about like how's her daughter doing, and that was like really sweet care. And that was, I think, cool for me too, because that made me realize like this didn't rest just on me.
It's a community thing.
That there were so many other people that like saw and cared for Lindsey. There were friends that would reach out to me, that would ultimately like be reaching out to Lindsey, and beyond just family. And that, I think, was really special to see so many people walking with someone.
Yeah. I'm sure you ministered to her mom too, just knowing feeling like my daughter's safer, you know, as she's with this husband who loves her, like Christ loves the church. Yeah. Wow.
any last thoughts as we wrap up today that you'd like to share?
I think just praying for everyone listening. And if they're struggling with something similar or heavy, to, just for the Lord to like wrap his arms around each of them and remind them that he's there for them.
Would you be willing to do that? Praying for those who are listening. Thank you, Lindsey.
Yeah. Dear Jesus, just thank you for this opportunity to just share a little bit about my story and how you played a part in it. And I know that it doesn't stop there. Your love and your comfort extends outward to so many people. And I just pray over all the people listening today, whether they're struggling with something that feels more situational or something that feels more long-term, you are near to them. Even though there are lies that they're thinking or the enemy is bringing into their minds, Lord, may you just silence those.
Yes, Lord.
be reminded of just the truth in the gospel and in your word, Lord. You will never abandon them. You will never forsake them. And there's nothing that could go on in their lives, no matter how heavy, that could separate you from them. We love you so much, and in your name we pray.
Amen.
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 Well, thank you guys for being willing to
What an
talk
honor.
about something that is so rarely, like, actually talked about from your experience, and being willing to go there with us. This is going to matter a ton to our listeners and matters a ton to us. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Wow, when we hear a story like Ryan and Lindsey, just the power of being with people. It's what it actually means to really be with somebody. That was so powerful, sitting with them, and what it means to actually move towards and hold space, and to actually take the time to learn the stories that depression is telling. And I just loved how Ryan knew, like, I don't know why that captivated me so much, but the idea that he would take her favorite candy to her. I don't know. I think there was something about that was so beautiful, of just also seeing her as more than her depression. It just seemed to communicate I don't know, that I'm going to be thinking about that for a while and recognizing how much I minimize the power of just one act of kindness, and then, and like Lindsey said, following up. But just what would have happened if that space hadn't been created for Lindsey? So beautiful, incredible.
I know. I mean, we had finished up from getting to film that part, and it really was. It's like, I can't believe that they would come and share, and what an honor it was to get to hear that. And as we kind of pivot this last half to really thinking about, okay, so what does it look like to be with people? I'm just so thankful we had Ryan here too, because even just the example that I think, it's so important to come to in this conversation of, for Ryan and for Lindsey, this shift for them, especially in their relationship and what it looked like to show up with one another. And then for her to be seen was the most simple question. What are you thinking?
What are you
right
thinking?
now?
It was not genius.
It's not rocket science.
Well, and it was interesting because it wasn't just what are you feeling, because with depression, you don't know what you're feeling, and there's numbness. So what a better question to ask, what are you thinking?
And then to give space for not to be shocked by what her thoughts are, not to think that those thoughts have the final word in Lindsey's life, not to have to correct thoughts that you're like, well, that is not true. Come on, I love you, whatever. But to give space to the question, what are you thinking right now? And for it to be something that they can constantly come back to, because her experience is going to change.
Keep changing. Yeah. It's just being able to enter into the darkness and not panic. I mean, we even think about physical darkness, like getting up really early this morning in the pitch dark and not wanting to wake up Jeff and my husband, and, you're fumbling around and you feel like you're going to fall. And I think when we're entering into other people's darkness, there can be that same sense of like, what if I step in the wrong spot? What if I, injure them, injure myself? And I think so that often can come with panic, right? So if we can stay calm and slow, and helping them put into words what they're experiencing, whether you go with the feel word or the think word. And I'm reminded of sometimes I sat as a counselor with those battling depression. Some of the most powerful ways I saw clients able to put into words was drawings too. So I think that's something we also should think about, especially if we're walking with children who are struggling, is, can you draw for me what's happening in your body? Can you just even the colors that they choose? But so many battling depression haven't been able to put a picture or word to it. And there is something that happens even physiologically when we can start naming. And I think that's by God's design. When we can start naming it, it feels less isolating, less alone, less hopeless. And then it can lead beautifully to the questions that they have about God, which are so core, as Lindsey shared, did God do this to me? Did I do this to me? we always are going to try to make sense out of suffering and depression, and often it's the questions. And so walking with them is creating space for the questions, you know?
I was thinking too, as we were talking about what it looks like to walk with people, specifically in these questions around God, just a really helpful question of, when was the last time that a scripture meant something or was helpful to you? Or when was the last time you were in church and you felt like God was meeting you? Or when you were at home? Or is there a song that's been meaningful to you?
I think songs have been huge.
And I think part of that is, it's good not to assume that God isn't. Like, we're not assuming that God hasn't been meeting them in some type of way, and we're exploring with them what that has looked like.
We shouldn't assume that, because even for Lindsey's story, God was using that. Well, she had both and, right? She had the, is God doing this to me? But she also was crying out to God, and he was also very present and became very personal at the same time. So there's so much paradox, right? There's so much we need to hold space for and not draw conclusions and make assumptions. It's so important that we're paying attention. We're just really listening.
And I think the paying attention piece is so pertinent with depression. I know I've had really dear friends, and it seems like, I guess they don't want to hang out with me anymore. It seems like they don't want me around. They stopped responding. And if I really start to pay attention, it's not just me that's happening to. Like, they have isolated, are pulling back. And so what does it look like to pursue someone when they're going down this hole? And I even think about what a challenge of what does it look like to actually love someone. And I can think about how my husband has been this for me in times of situational depression, of even thinking of myself as like, I am not fun right now. I am not super pleasant to be around.
There's nothing in it for him right now.
There is nothing. And I feel different, and you're watching me change or be different in this time. And yet you still are pursuing me, and you don't love me because of what I provide here, but you just see me and you love me. And so being able to kind of sense when our people are pulling back, what it looks like to notice that, and to know that it's worth stepping towards.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's where we bring into this idea, or it's important for us to begin to talk a little bit more deeply about suicidal thoughts, because when people are really truly isolating from everybody, not just one or two that maybe they isolated from purposefully because they say the wrong things, but they're really pulling out of all of life, that's a time to really consider how the circle needs to be widened, and some really direct questions need to be asked. And that's where we need to step into the space of saying, are you having thoughts about death? And we need to be direct. And I think this is something I learned in my training that just absolutely surprised me. I always thought that if I brought up the word suicide, I was planting the thought in their head that somehow I'm communicating to them. But the reality is it comes out of the darkness. And it wasn't until I started practicing it that I realized that's absolutely true. And I'm less fearful now of saying, are you having suicidal thoughts? What are your thoughts about death? And trying to differentiate, is it just escape? I wish I could just not wake up. Or no, I really am. I really do want to die. And then being able to ask those follow-up questions, do you have a plan? And do you have the means? So somebody may say, yes, I do. This is how I would want to die. And yes, I do have the means in my home. That's when we've got to call 911. And we need to stay with the person until help arrives. Because when somebody has a plan and they have the means, that's gone past just the desire to escape. That's when we're in serious danger. And there's actually even a crisis line, 988, which is a number we should all have on our phones, that is specific to suicide. But 911 will work as well. As you described, you just want to say this is a mental health crisis, this is a suicidal situation, so that the right team is sent. If you're on the phone, a lot of times that's what's happening. They won't see us, but maybe they'll pick up the phone. You want to stay with them and communicate. I am reaching out for help because I love you so much, and I cannot let anything happen to you. That being said, we also have to remember we can't prevent anybody from those suicidal thoughts, not even as parents, not even as the people closest who love them the most. We can be part, though, of their circle and widening the circle of care that they need. So we want to reach out, and if you are walking with somebody who is at that level of crisis, you need help. And I think that's one thing that was really important in talking even to Ryan about his situation, like where's the support you're getting? And I appreciated that he said, I haven't thought about that as much. He did have areas, but I think it's a good thing to remind families and friends that you need support too to continue to stay. If we're going to stay, we need people to stay with us as we stay. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I know. I think the importance of asking that question too, even just from the start of where it leads. In one situation, it leads to what's getting immediate
911.
help.
Mm-hmm.
But even being brave enough to ask that question, I think part of it is just the reality that suicide continues to rise as a leading cause of death. And even as we're sitting with someone to acknowledge, I care about you enough to ask a question that feels uncomfortable, and also to acknowledge the, I guess, gravity of what they're sharing about their depression, that even being able to bring into the room, like this could lead somewhere you don't ever want it to go.
Right.
And how important, I think you had said this already, but as much as we have the power to show up, like we do not have the power to foolproof prevent this for people.
Yeah.
Gosh, and what a heavy tension to live in.
And even if we are getting that, no, I don't have a plan, I don't have a means, I think love says, will you tell me if you do? Will you tell me if your thoughts move beyond, I just want to go to sleep and not wake up, but I would never harm myself? Will you promise to tell me if that happens? And I've had people promise that and then reach out when it did move and we were able to make that circle wide. But so that 988 is really important, and also holding both that. We want to move towards, and we want to be part of that circle of care that we pray is going to ease the suffering, and we also can't prevent ultimately. We are not savers of lives, but we do enter into the dark places with the Lord.
As we've been talking about what we're going to share, I felt important that, the thought of suicide it's just a thought. It could come into your head 1 minute and it could easily leave the next minute. It could be
even an obtrusive thought. You don't even want the thought. It just comes in without your permission.
Absolutely. And then there is a shift when this is something that sounds desirable.
I'm entertaining it now.
Yeah. So,
and that brings up an important piece in the being with others is prayer. And I appreciated Lindsey mentioning prayer and praying for our listeners. Prayer is huge, because some of those lies that depression tells can also be our enemy telling those lies. So, but let's talk about how we can point to Jesus in this. We don't save lives, but we know the Savior of all life, and the one who secures our eternal life. So how do we bring Jesus into this? What does it look like to point to the light of the world in the darkness?
Absolutely. I think as much as perhaps someone from the outside in would love to see this person you desperately care about struggling with depression to be freed and to not have to feel this weight anymore. And you even see that in Ryan towards Lindsey of, I wish I could take this from you.
We could switch places.
And obviously that is God's ultimate intention with full healing and restoration as he returns, or we return to him. And yet in the meantime, our God did not bypass suffering. He did not escape it. He went right to the middle of it. And so I think we can skip over how important that truth is, that he is not skipping over you, but he's been there and he's with you.
Yeah, on that cross, I think, like you were talking about Gethsemane, and one of the and Jesus going into that dark place of anticipating his death. And for me, a lot of it is that hanging on the cross and quoting Psalm 22, my God, why have you abandoned me? And the darkness that fell. So here we have these two primary descriptors of depression, feeling abandoned and in the dark. And darkness falls for 3 hours as he becomes sin for those who will put their trust in him. So I think one thing often we can miss in the church is Jesus was not modeling how to bring God into darkness. He was actually experiencing it.
Yeah.
Fully, and in ways that we'll never know, in ways that we've been rescued from because of faith in him and securing that eternal salvation for us. So there's no depth of depression. There's no that Jesus didn't go there first. And I think Lindsey said this too. It was so beautiful that, he sat her for her, that she was able to move from God is doing this to me. Like, no, this is life in a broken world. This is not the way it was supposed to be. Depression is part of the fall. And God is redemptive. And instead of he's doing this to me, he's actually ministering to me. There is no stubborn darkness that can keep Jesus out, and no stubborn darkness that he hasn't already known. So he again, he's with us in it with full understanding, that sympathetic high priest who knows every weakness.
And I think too about the people who they don't see an out. There is no promise that this will lift. And I think the reality that God can meet us there too. And I see that in the Psalms. In Psalm 88, there's this it feels unfinished. It's like,
darkness is my only friend.
When are we going to turn to faith? And when are we going to turn to hope? And when are we going to turn to but God, you will rescue me. And yeah, it ends unfinished with
darkness is my only friend.
Darkness is my only friend. And to allow people to be in that place with God, it does feel like, wait, but we're missing something, but we're not here. We are allowed to be unfinished.
We are. And yet we still have the hope of Psalm 89 and Psalm 90. And so we may be in a Psalm 88 moment, but even if it doesn't lift in this lifetime, there is an eternity of those Psalms of ascent that are just, resting and restored and redeemed. And so the movement, because of Jesus now into eternity, is there will be no depression for all eternity. And so for our brothers and sisters that have suffered, and I'm just going to go out on a limb, even for those who have despaired to life, I do not believe anything in Scripture teaches that's unforgivable sin. I think for any believer to get to that place where they do take their own life, I truly believe, as I look at the Scriptures and I look at God's character, they are eternally whole now. And I grieve for the years that the church taught that was an unforgivable sin. That's not what the Scriptures teach. To want to give up on life is not normal. It's not how we're made. So to get to that level, I believe God is more broken-hearted than they are. And so we just thank Jesus for what he has done to give eternal security and comfort and healing and wholeness.
And also, please hear, and what are you going to hear from us on a podcast that is going to change necessarily where you're at right now, but your life is so valuable. God values life. He values your life. And he has more for you here.
He does. Absolutely. So this is what gives us hope as we walk with people in depression, not that we can prevent that stubborn darkness, but that we have a God who does pierce it, and that we get to incarnate him. We're just a small reflected light, but we are that light that gets to walk in. So let's land this time together looking at some things that we've learned about do's and don'ts, and believe me, my list continues to grow. I'll probably think of some don'ts I shouldn't have done even on this podcast. So grace, please. Grace and mercy, please.
I know.
So,
I have my notes for this
start
portion,
with your do's. What kind of do's have you learned as we are so privileged and honored to be invited into this really hard place with people?
Man, I love we have our example Ryan too.
I
from
know.
today.
He's bottle him up.
To slow down, to learn
Slow
that it's
down.
not our job to fix people, but instead to show up by asking questions, open-ended questions. Tell me what the darkness is saying to you, to be able to show up. And as much as there may be some resistance or people trying to isolate, just that reminder of I am here, I am with you, I will check back in. Being able to stay the course and honor your word in that is really important. And then as we really do want to be people who bring this light, who incarnate Christ, to be with them as people who do come before the Lord in prayer, and to even encourage them to go themselves of Jesus, help.
Jesus, help.
Jesus, you see me.
Even just Jesus, even just his name.
Just Jesus, absolutely. So I need you. And then being able to ask the Lord to show up even in smaller, specific ways of, God, thank you for this meal. And even seeing that with Elijah of he was at the point where he wanted to die and God provided for his basic needs.
Yeah.
What does it look like to attend to just those basic needs? And I do love some of these other things on our list, being able to read scripture. And again, not as this, you must believe this, but what if this was true? And we got to hold to the fact that the Bible tells us it's true, even if our mind is lying to us in a different way. And then also knowing it's good to just maybe take a step outward to invite someone to come over for something small, to go on a walk, to do a favor for someone else. We've seen that be really helpful in being able to even kind of lift the eyes and the spirit to see, okay, there are good things happening, even if it might not feel like it for me. And then
So good.
the really important piece of widening that circle for people. And so there
Always.
really are physiological components here, really important mental, and like how do we deal with the thought life that we have, that both outside help from either therapy or perhaps medication can actually be tools that open the door for the soul
Work to happen.
for the soul care and the soul work to happen. So those are really,
Those create space.
Yeah.
And the ability. I love Psalm 50, or Isaiah 58. It talks about when you spend yourself on behalf of the needy and give yourself to the poor, your light will rise in the darkness. It just seems to be a picture to me of when you can step out. If you can walk alongside somebody to step out towards another, something does happen. And even getting to talk to Lindsey afterwards a little bit, kind of the off-camera part. Lindsey is in the midst of her practicum to be a therapist. And so she not only said that it was helpful to be here and to share her story, knowing it would help some of our listeners, but she's also committing her life to helping other people. And that has really made a big difference for her. And I can't imagine what an incredible therapist she is and is going to be as she
Truly.
continues.
I know. We were like, wait, we should have talked about this. But look, here we are now.
Yeah. So she's, an incredible woman. So the don'ts, I think the don'ts I've learned the hard way is don't assume the cause. It's we go in with our biases, and we assume just by looking, and we need to ask. Don't assume it's a sin struggle, but also ask. Ask, is there some guilt or shame you're experiencing? Sometimes people, we see it in David, we can battle deep depression because of unconfessed sin. We don't believe we can be forgiven. And that sense of being not forgiven can really take us dark places. So walking people through the ability to be forgiven, that the cross is enough to cover anything we have done or has been done to us, can be healed as well. So don't avoid talking about suicidal thoughts. And again, as we've mentioned so many times, this is our only our only ability to even do this actual episode of this podcast is if depression is persistent, please, please, please widen the circle. Involve pastors, involve clinical specialists, therapists, psychiatrists, physicians. Widen the principle you're going to keep hearing over and over with us on this podcast is we widen the circle until the suffering there's comfort coming. And so I would say anybody walking with someone who's battling depression, or if you are and it's persistent, please, please widen that circle of care. And then as we talked with Ryan, don't forget about the family and friends who are wrestling, and especially for those who have lost loved ones to suicide, let's minister to them. Let's care for their souls. Let's remind them that it's not their fault. And I think lastly, there's a spiritual warfare component to this we talked about. And so we need to be people who pray. We're people, and not minimize that power of prayer.
I really had appreciated that. Even, I mean, it's like churchy language we use, but Lindsey especially was using this language too of the enemy and lies, and just knowing that brokenness has come into our world from so many different angles. Our bodies are impacted, our minds are impacted, our spirits, our own flesh and desires are impacted. But we just cannot forget that there is this spiritual warfare component.
We don't battle just flesh and blood.
Absolutely. So
for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Pattie,
Here we go. Time
we're
to
so
close
thankful
off.
that you guys would be here. And if you are someone struggling, please widen your circle. We would just encourage you to take a step towards one other person. And we want you to know that you are seen and you are valued by the God who created you.
Definitely seek those trusted friends and counselors. And if you're walking alongside somebody who is suffering, we encourage you to widen your circle as well. Learn more. We have some resources. Ask good questions just to understand depression. Ed Welch, that I mentioned earlier, has an amazing book that has been super helpful to me. You'll see that in the show notes. And make sure you're getting care as you walk with others. Widen your own circle of care.
And it is our prayer for every single time that we get to share about what it is to suffer in this broken world, that we would really see that these places that are dark and broken, when we're with one another and when Jesus is with us,
They're holy.
They really do become holy ground.
Absolutely. So if this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend. And again, there'll be some show notes with some additional resources, and we hope to see you back.
Thanks for being here today.
Bye-bye.